Hello, everyone. Thank you. I first want to say thank you to Inbal to invite me to moderate this panel about well-being at work here in Spetses, because well-being at work has been a big subject in my life as a production designer or as working in the film industry, and I'm sure it's not only me but many others who are having the one or the other struggle maintaining it. So I'm very, very happy sitting here today with these three wonderful people working on large-scale projects and hopefully sharing today with us some insight on how they keep or on how they integrate and keep or maintain well-being throughout a project for themselves, but also for their team, like for their crew. Because when I talk to my clients, especially the younger ones, which are, most of them are production designers, they basically more or less ask me the question, how to not burn out after the first project, or whenever. So I think many of us have had these experiences of like close to really being worn away, or I don't like the word burnout because I struggle to not, that it doesn't happen to me too much, but yeah, I think we all have experiences on the border, and I would like to start with maybe the matter of working hours, and then we will obviously find all the other subject that they are, because this is what we talked about in the pre-talk a lot, and I think I would like to start with Beth, because you're like, what's your approach in your current project concerning well-being and everything?
Great. Well, I'll start too with a little anecdote. Where's sweet Inbal? Inbal is out there somewhere. There she is in the back. So Inbal and I started the industry together 20-some years ago on teeny tiny little movies, little two-people art departments, $200,000 movies, itty-bitty. And I just saw we were working 18 hours a day, 20 hours a day, and I knew, and we saw many mentors just burn out, by the time they were 50, 60, just not able to do this. And I love what I do, and I want to do it till I'm 85, I want to do it till I'm 90, I want to be designing movies till they kick me off the stage. But also recognize it just wasn't sustainable with that kind of workload. And so I thought, as the movies get bigger, workload will get easier, and it just went the opposite. And I just found the bigger the movies got, the harder the pressure was, the longer the days were, the more extensive the work was. And I just came off, a few months ago, I came off one of the biggest movies I was fortunate enough to do, and we just had construction working 72 days straight. We had set designers working 7 days a week, 14 hours a day. And I just thought I wanted to try to find just a new way of doing things. And so with that, I started on the new film I'm on now, just trying to really measure the hours and having people sort of make their own hours in a way. And we'll talk more about it as we go, I'm sure. But I just thought for my sustainability, for the team's sustainability, it was going to be really important for that. And it's gone extremely well. I find that people are more excited about the work, people come in more creative, people come in more enthusiastic, people feel like they have more ownership of their time, they get home to have dinner with their kids, they can walk their kids to school. I really prioritize, tell everybody, go to the gym at lunch, get some fresh air, try to get some space, come back and you'll be much fresher in the afternoon, because that's how it really does work for me. And it's just worked wonderfully with the department, and seeing how it's gone, I really feel like I want to try to continue this way of work moving forward with films big and small, and just try to make sure that we set our boundaries so that when productions are barreling down on us, as they always do, and there's always last minute work, of course we'll always get it done, but just to not let it be the expected way of going through our work days. So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I was going to say it's one of the things that's happened, and I've got lots of colleagues in sort of concept design in the UK, and their experience of presenteeism in the art department, where it's first in, last out, and it's almost competitive within that, and they've been lobbying for a long time, and one thing we've done with Bectu in the UK particularly is the new production agreement is 10 hours on camera plus 1 for lunch as a default setting. It used to be 11 plus 1. And so beyond the shooting crew, trying to make that manageable and try and make that more achievable with people's lives. I mean, there's lots of beautiful studies with looking at, working time directives, looking at how, because we try and deliver projects in such short spaces of time, we think we have to fit the same amount of hours in, and financially, you could spend the same amount of money over a longer period of time and get better results. So trying to torpedo that idea and say, maybe not as liberated in a sense as what Beth's doing on her project, but trying to instill within the department the idea that you're not paid for your attendance on a very, very real sense. You're not paid to sit at a desk and grind. We are paid to deliver and to make sure that we turn over on time. And so how that happens and the mechanisms of how that happens are sort of unprogramming ourselves so that we can say, okay, what's actually required for this? Like, what do we need to do? And what can you as a graphic designer, the art director, the set decorator, how can you manage your lives? And so one thing we've actually got on my current project is a number of part-time roles where, so we have a part-time accountant in the art department and we have a part-time coordinator. And that allows the set decorator who's got 2 young children to manage her life. And, initially we went into the conversations with the line producer and said, well, do we need to look at actually only billing out for a certain number of hours? But when we looked at what deliverables were, we just went back and said, no, we're going to deliver the job. Like, if I'm there 3 hours a day, as long as I can answer all the questions, and going back to what some of the panelists have said in the previous things, is like, I really am not paid to attend. I am paid to think. Like, that's my entire job is to take a script and come up with a solution to get us on the lens, and get us on the lens in a timely and organized, and obviously creative. But my responsibility is we turn over and no one's got any questions on the day. Everyone's content, every kind of artistic whim has been satiated, every conceptual idea has been seen through, but the point is you turn up and you turn over. It's not a case of, cramming. So actually looking at the workload and looking at what we deliver, and even so far as on the current project, which is, like a 6-part episodic kind of procedural murder of the week thing, really getting back into a mesh with the locations team in the way that I used to on independent cinema, and making sure we're going to the right places to film, so we're not having to do extended hours. We're not having to run paint and construction teams doing, double banking, and teams stepping off a strike to go into a dress. It's like, no, there's some things don't require us to do that. We can do better. So it's, hopefully instilling in everyone like a new way of thinking about what we're delivering, where, and again, just John's beautiful, reference to disobeying. And, the idea of no being a powerful, positive word in the art department. But again, going back to what was also said, was that you come up with the alternative solution, and we're not there to fulfill the whims of our producers and our directors. We're employed as creative collaborators. And so I think younger crew members coming up have, and we've all done it, the idea that you're going to please them. And actually it's like, no, they don't know what they want. Like, let's be brutally honest, on some level you need to please yourself creatively and fit the brief of the script, and the script is the thing you're working from. So,
what do you mean by you're not paid to attend? What do you mean by that?
So, on a very basic level, my contract is whatever it is, like 55 hours a week, let's say, on a TV project. I don't need to be at the office or on set for an accumulated 55 hours. Yeah, okay. On some days, I'll phone my team. I said, I'm not coming in this morning. I've got scripts to do. I need to go through, redo the breakdowns. They've issued new pages. Or we've just been on a recce. I need to go and sketch. Because my hours will split. I've got 3 children. I co-parent with my ex. So I have to pick my kids up on a Friday and have to get them back to school on a Monday. And so I cannot be available for all of those crazy whims at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Sorry, there's 3 kids, they need fed. It ain't happening if I don't do it. And sort of trying to, and again, kind of coming at the approach, and so much of this is overshare slightly, but my own self-discovery is like, I need to make space for that in my life to be effective at work. I need to be emotionally nourished by those around me that love me. And the only way to do that is to spend time with them. You know, they're not clients, they're not people you can, you know, say, oh no, I'm your parent, we should have a relationship. No, you need to be there. And I mean, and for someone who for such a long time, you know, like I buried myself in my work as coping mechanisms for a lot of things. And actually this revelation that actually, no, like I'm more effective if I'm clear-headed, and I can go into the room and my experience and my knowledge and the things I understand are more powerful if I'm calm and I'm centered. You know, I can be more open to suggestion. I can be more open to change, as was discussed. I can be more open to ideas. I won't box myself in and, you know, kind of try and find my corner. It's like, well, let's make the best version of this and play that one. That was a long answer, sorry.
My turn to talk now.
Yeah.
So I think what Jamie, what you're talking about, I like to say is like task-based work rather than punching the clock, which I think is so
completely
important. My own background, I came to production design from an entirely different craft, from theatrical design, where I was a pure freelancer, and which has its own well-being issues. But that being said, there was something about, I was the only person responsible for my time or how I organized my time. As long as I knew that I was getting the work done that needed to be done, I could give myself the breaks I needed, especially at that time. I had small children, and you can organize your time in a creative way and still manage to fulfill the task. Moving into production design, it's obviously a completely different structure because you're responsible for a large team of people. And so your presence in the office is necessary, but what I've always tried to think about doing, carrying over from my previous work, is how do we break down the office-ness of the office? Because it always seemed odd to me that we work in a creative field and office culture seemed inherently uncreative to me, just in the sense that you don't, as Jamie was saying, you don't come in to do time, you come in to do your work. So the more I could turn that into allow people flexibility when they come in, can they leave to do things that they need to do for their personal lives, you end up with a more productive, a happier crew, rather than people, I never wanted to feel that people were waiting for me to leave before they could leave. If they need to leave, they should leave if they've done their work. Of course, it puts a huge, we are under a huge amount of pressure in these jobs to deliver, so you have to be managing all the time with your coordinator and your art director to make sure the work's being done. But there is a way, I think, to create a creative workspace that's more humane, and that's something that because it's something that I kind of always assumed, I've always applied that. But it's a challenge, and the timeline challenges that are made upon us are massive at times. And that kind of leads to the other thing I try to do is advocate for my department. And the job I'm currently on, we were given a production schedule that was literally unachievable. And it always falls on the art department first to bring the production to reality, and I have to go in and tell the producers we need 2 more weeks, which is never a popular thing to say, but it was necessary. So it's about having the ability to do that. It sometimes won't be accepted, and sometimes you'll have to put, we'll all be under more pressure, but I think there's ways to make it more humane and protect our well-being. And I also wanted to say, we're on the well-being committee. We have not solved well-being, so I wish we had. But these are all the issues and things that I think are occurring to all of us.
And I'll piggyback off of that, just an interesting observation I had with just thinking about the hours that we're doing. 2 or 3 shows ago, I noticed, that we had concept artists who were we traveled and who were coming in, to the production office with us and working, and the set designers all getting in at 7:30, working away and, staying 12 hours, and then the concept artist would roll in at, 11, 10, 11 o'clock, and they would just kind of say, this is what we do, we're artists, And that was very accepted. I saw it was very accepted, and I didn't mind it. I'm a very big believer in finding however you are optimized. I'm optimized differently from the way Jamie is, different from the way Neil is. This is what we do as artists. How are we most effective at what we do? And so the concept artists took that stance with the hours they were putting in. Everybody was still basically doing the same amount of time in a day, but the concept artists, they would come in at 11, and then they would stay and they'd get dinner and have pizza, and then they'd hang till 9, 10 o'clock. And anyway, it was kind of a light bulb moment, just kind of realizing, everybody in this department is artists, from the PAs to the set designers to the art directors. Just because their title is different doesn't mean a set designer is any less of an artist than a concept artist. And so that led into what I was saying earlier as well with the hours. Another light bulb moment was we were on Splits on a movie a year or 2 ago, and my art director, Lauren Fleming, if anybody's worked with her, she's amazing. She was art directing a big beach set that we had built, and we were doing splits, and she and I were on set till midnight or 2 in the morning enjoying it, and she couldn't have been happier, couldn't have been more energetic, couldn't have been more productive. I was hanging onto the foam rocks, trying to keep my energy, and trying not to fall asleep. And she just said, she's like, I'm a night owl. I work best. If I could work, if I could start my day at 11 and work until midnight, I would be so happy. And anyway, it was just kind of a good observations of realizing, like Neil said, the office culture. Why are we trying to stick to this 8 to 6 schedule, 8 to 8 schedule, when we're just a very creative department, and we should be more open than that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's one of the concepts of an art department. Sort of, essentially, it's like an atelier. It's a studio. It's not an office. We are not, and that kind of, tasks can get started at lunchtime, and they can take weeks, and someone can dip in and out of that project, and trying to, allow people that space and say, actually, can I take this home? I mean, sort of post-COVID, obviously, lots of working from home going on, and certain, the last job, the job I'm on at the moment, like the number of COVID spikes we've had production-wide mean that we're all been working at home. I've done 2 weeks from home already on the job. But letting people carve that space and say, look, I know I need to do this. I understand, I always say that I understand my own parameters, and, Colleen was talking about, closing the door in the office. It's like, I need peace and quiet. If I'm in the bullpen of the team, I get nothing done. I answer lots of questions and assist everybody else in their workload and do that leadership role. But as a designer, I cannot think. And so I need to take myself away. And so I can then recognize that my team have that as well. And they all have, there's one of my crew, Ryan, is an office beast. He loves coming in at 7 and he stays till 8. And that's his jam. And I've challenged him enough times. But he's like, no, this is how I feel comfortable. It gives me time during the middle of the day. If I put the hours at either end, and I'm just like, well, whatever floats your boat.
I have a question to that. Because in order to get where you guys are, and putting this amount of trust into your crew, because I think that not everyone here can imagine to let the crew run free, I would say.
I don't think they run free at all.
No, not run free.
Very maybe much a dictatorship.
But I think there's others of us who prefer having everyone in the office at, let's say 8 or 9 o'clock, and then sort of being able to control. Mm-hmm. Yeah? How did you, or can you give advice on how to let that go, maybe, and how to trust?
Well, what I'll say to that, when I started this film I'm on now, we really curated the department. We had come from a bigger show, and so there was a nice pool of folks to pick from. We were so lucky; we just had some of the best talent I've ever been surrounded by. It was so fortunate for everyone. But then we had to kind of cull down to the 15 or 16 folks that were going to come on this new journey with us, and so we definitely hand-selected the ones that we knew wouldn't take advantage of the system. But as we were going through, we realized we really didn't think many, if any, really would take advantage of the system. But then we did, as the job started, I sat everybody down. I said, okay, we're going to try a different way of approaching this. And I had taken a little bit of a poll in the movie before and asked, for input. And interesting, Kalina had said having everybody do remote Fridays. That was one of the notes from the set designers was just one remote day a week where they could pick the day. And I thought, okay, that sounded good. And then the hours again, you can, if you're a morning bird and you want to come in at 6 a.m., please do, but don't feel obligated to stay till 6 when, when things would wrap up or, so we kind of laid it out and just said at the top, listen, this is only going to work and only going to be successful if everybody still puts in the time, puts in the work, gets everything done, at the end of the day, at the end of the week. So we kind of put it on them a bit to say this is a social experiment we're going to try, and if we're successful, at least for me, for my department, for the way I want to run things, I would want to keep doing that for the rest of my life because I feel like it's a more humane, more creative environment. And so anyway, every single person has really stepped up, and we've been on it for 4.5 months now, and we've produced more work and better work, and everybody has really, nobody's taken advantage, everybody's really, really tuned in. So that's been really fulfilling to see that.
Okay, and just another question to that. You were talking about 8-hour days, or did I remember that wrong?
Well, doing some shorter days for sure. Like it's, kind of balancing it, not necessarily like, we can just go to 6-hour days if we want, but more, spread your time out. And if you want to have a 6-hour day on the Thursday, and you're not going to be able to get as much done, put some time in on the weekend, just try to balance it out. But not necessarily saying, hey, we're all doing 6 or 8 hours now, but.
So you did not talk about, to production about
we did not.
Concept. Okay. Because this would have been my next question, on how to actually prepare production or involve them into well-being at work.
I mean, it's intense. So the last project I was on, the production team was so, they were the very definition of presenteeism, and they were brutal to each other. Like the office dynamics in that team were competitive and very much showboating, and we as an art department, and we were the floor above, kind of, we had a rolling program of sets. It was like 107 builds over 127 camera days. It was intense, and we were just constantly churning. But because of the nature of what we were delivering and all the deliverables, I suppose going back to that idea of like knowing what's going on and letting people run with it, I think my instinct is I want to be in everything. I want to know everything. And I'm constantly communicating with my team, where are you with that? And it's not, I'm not checking that they're doing it. It's just that, my own creative process can be erratic, I think would be the word at times. And I know that I need to, and especially the kind of budget levels I've been working at coming through independent film, is that, by constantly changing the parameters and just batting it towards a solution, means that my instinct is to be across everything. So when people are doing stuff remotely, I'm just like pinging them, like, where are you? Just send me a screenshot. And just keeping across that. So maybe that's a facility that I explore and use in my own OCD nature with my department, is to let them know that they should just communicate. Like, it's important that if they're given a task as well, and this is a hard thing to teach someone, if they're given a task and they are struggling with it, and Kalina mentioned something earlier where a SketchUp model was taken off an art department member and given to someone else to do in a time frame, and that person had an issue and obviously, quite, very mature in the sense of came and talked to Kalina about it, but that sense of just like, the decision making I'm doing, if you don't feel you're capable of it, that's not a failure. Like, that's because I've asked too much for you, or you're not experienced enough, or there's not enough time, and letting people say, well, I don't think I can, and it's like, okay, well, we'll do something else. So constantly to move the goalposts, and I was mentioning to Beth, I had a graphic designer on the project at the moment who left because he couldn't work like that. We reached an impasse where he wanted like hands-on, like micromanaged in the sense of just like really explicit instructions and no room to grow. And I was like, I don't have time for that. I've got scouts to go on and this sort of stuff. So it's, it has its pros and cons. Sometimes you encounter people, and I think, maybe once every third project or so, you'll encounter someone whose working practice doesn't mesh with your working practice. And sorry to skip off the topic slightly, but learning how to navigate that has been, like, it's hard. It's one of the hardest things about being a manager, because none of us have training. We only have experience of going through it, and there's learned behaviors that we've all got that some of them are wrong. And there's no one to tell us they're wrong until we find ourselves in a situation where we have to post-rationalize and just say, okay, what am I actually doing here? Like, am I treating these people with the respect I think I am? Or is that just my head just telling me stories, or my self-convincing?
So Neil, how many hours do you work a week?
3.
Sorry.
2.5. It's hard to say, actually, because I think as the production designer, there's hours I'm in the office, and then there's hours I'm working. And, I sometimes need, I think there's something about certain part of creative process is solitary, and I need a time alone for that. And sometimes I'll be thinking, I'm always thinking about things. So it's hard to quantify. It's like I'm basically always working, but I have to create boundaries, because I will truly go mad if I do that. But I need to somehow create boundaries. But I think what's hard is we all are programmed to want to please, right? We want to do a beautiful job. We want the movie, the TV show to look incredible. So on a personal level, we're able, willing sometimes to probably sacrifice too much of our time, because we're artists and we want the best possible product. And but at the same time, in terms of managing a department, you have to protect your department. You have to not let everybody maybe make the same sacrifice you would make. And that's a different subject, is like, it came up in earlier things, do you really want to be a production designer? Because it does require that kind of level of commitment sometimes. But to create your own well-being and the well-being for department, it's how you manage it. And that's tricky. And I think this whole concept of presence and work hours is a really good conversation to be had, because it's also it varies in the flow of a project. There are times when I need the assistant art directors in the office, because literally by the hour we're making decisions, creative decisions, and I need to be involved in those. Also, I don't want them to go off on a tangent that's not what we're looking for, is not helpful, so it's managing that. But there are other things, like sometimes you have a 3D artist modeling something to be 3D printed, and you've decided what it is. It kind of doesn't matter when or where they do it, as long as they get it done on time, right? So I think it really is, it really depends on what the task is and what needs to be done in the office. But yes, I didn't answer your question, how many hours?
Can you please estimate? Can you estimate at least, like, are we talking 50, 60, 70, how many hours?
Oh, I mean, it's at least 60 hours a week, I think you end up.
Is this working?
Yeah.
It is that thing of just like, again, I suppose, pushing against that presenteeism is, I suppose, in a sense, because we come away and we're thinking about the script in the bath, and we're thinking about it, and it's like, and it's all of those things that everybody in the department can compartmentalize their role to an extent. But as a designer, you need to be thinking about it. You need to know what standbys are needing on Monday, what the props are meant to be, what the director's expectation is of that, what the SFX team think they're doing, because they're going to come and ask you. I mean, especially in the UK, as as a designer, you are leading everything but camera. You know what I mean? It's like your relationship with the locations team, and then all the SFX and all the props departments come directly through you, and you're the person everyone's calling to ask. So you need to be across it as much as you can. And I think the hardest thing, I would admit, about the job is constantly having to remind myself to read the new pages, and just, every time there's an amendment, it's like, well, I've got to sit and work through that. I've got to make sure we've got that so that my team don't go down a blind alley. And so you just work constantly. And, again, children, life, learning how to turn that off is, it's hard.
Delayed email is a great thing over the weekend, so you don't torture your department with that. On Saturday afternoon, when you realize that something is going in terribly the wrong direction, and you're Monday, 8 a.m., that will go out.
I've got a great idea. It can wait.
But it is, we are all constantly processing that. So.
Yeah, you were also referring to the pleasing thing. So I actually asked myself the question a lot, that where's the line between wanting to please, of course, yourself, the director, the DOP, and to okay, where am I making it too hard on my department to fulfill this, like my pleasure? Yeah, where would you say, or do you actually feel those moments where you're pushing it too far? Do you then, and how do you then react? Do you then lower your expectations to yourself, or your perfectionism that you normally follow through? I think that's a difficult thing to manage, like perfectionism as such, and then where am I wanting to please, and where do I have to let go in order to save my team or my crew?
I can actually jump in very quickly on that, only, especially for the younger designers here. That has been the biggest learning experience in my career. When I first started, I still remember I was an assistant on an ABC, Peter Jennings' ABC news show, and I remember the designer had left me and said, okay, you're here to babysit, and I said, okay. And then we had to pull some flats in, you know, behind Peter, and I just remember I was 21 or something like that, and I just remember the stagehands who had all been drinking at lunch, I did not know, all just said, oh, we'll never be able to do, oh, it's just not enough, oh, it's just, oh, and they gave me the sob story, and I was 21, and they were all 2-3 times my age, and I thought, oh, okay, I'm asking something really unreasonable. And of course, the next morning, the production designer was like, no, like this should have been done, this can be done, they will ride roughshod over you if you let them. And so I remember taking that experience, but then I remember thinking, okay, in the years ahead, I'm really gonna have to keep my eyes open as to what really is doable in a time frame, what really is too much to ask or too little to ask. And I feel like I'm still learning, and I feel like, you know, now I feel like I have finally started to get a better sense of what is too much to ask, what is too much to demand in a time frame. Oh, you know, I think we should change that to this. And to know, and having a team that you trust, and when they really sit you down and say, listen, this just isn't going to be doable, then saying, okay, like, I'm going to take your word for it, and I'm going to believe you because we've been working together for years and I trust you. Let's come up with something similar that we can do within the time frame. But I will say, and again, for the younger designers out there, that's been a continuing education for me, and I'm sure it will be for you guys too. It's always trying to figure out really what is reasonable and doable in the time. But then I think it's very much on us, and specifically on us and our art directors, supervising art directors, to listen. You know, when the crew is telling you this really is too much, or the set designer is saying we really can't get all these drawings done by the end of the week, we're going to need more time. I know historically, I think the philosophy has always been, no, you cannot say no. That's not reasonable. That's not what we're here for. But I've been starting over the last 4, 5, 6 years, sort of turning a little bit of a new leaf with that and saying, no, I actually think it is okay for us to draw some boundaries and say, listen, to the production, to the director, we can't do X, but here's 3 other things we can do. And I've just found time and time again, they're all just happy for the options, happy for the solutions. They don't want us working and killing ourselves and grinding ourselves to the bone. So I think that's coming away from that. That's really helped me to kind of draw my lines set boundaries, figure out perfectionism, to what extent we can take perfectionism too.
I think that sense of trying to please someone or having the dreaded words where someone says to you, can you make this work? And it's like, if someone says, can I make this work? They tend to get a no, to be honest, because it's like if we're having to, and we were talking about this before, this idea of like, you're spending time and resources and energy and pushing your team to only achieve a compromise because the baseline isn't right. And that's one of the worst things we'll do as art departments, and we will all have done it, where you basically take a location or a scenario which you know isn't achievable, but because you want to please that person, you say yes to it, and you push hard, and you come off the back of it, and you know it's not what it could have been and what it should have been. But that takes a ton of learning to get to the point and actually just say, I'm not here to serve you, the director, I'm here to, or the producer, I'm here to serve the story. And so, you know, in terms of concepts of production design, it's the idea of like having, you know, an esoteric version of an idea, something that can be delivered in many ways at many budget levels. Like if an idea is strong enough, you can deliver it for 10 euro, 100 euro, 1,000 euro, 100,000 euro. And you can still tell the same story. And I mean, referencing theatre, I cut my teeth for a few years in theatre before I realised I had no money. It was brutal. I was like, I can't do this anymore. But in that situation, you are telling quite wild, emotionally imaginative stories under the most tight, stringent of concepts, or timelines, or budgets, or you've got one stage, you need to do two turnarounds on a set. So you have to come up with, the idea between the lines on the page. And if you can learn to do that, and for me that was a revelation in my working practice, was to, step slightly away from the conceptual start where I came through sort of commercials and light entertainment environments, into storytelling, and come up with my reasons for why things had to exist, and then let the parameters of the project dictate what the deliverable actually was. So, my first few projects, I was shooting for the moon every time, wild ambition, and sometimes you hit it, but mostly you fall short and you brutalize your team. You push everybody too far. So it's not about perfectionism, it's about understanding what design is, and understanding why you're there. And again, you're not there to please the people. You're their collaborative peer. You've been hired alongside them as the designer to help them deliver the script, the story, illuminate these characters. And I think that's a power dynamic that I think it took me a long time to learn, and I don't think is kind of extolled enough in kind of any kind of education. It's just like, the number of low-budget features I did where they're like, this is all we've got, make it work. And it's a pot of cash, and it's impossible. And you're going to have to ask for 18-hour days from your team. And as the years have gone on, you get to a point where you're just like, no, guys, what you're asking for the money you've got on the page is not achievable. We can still tell that story, but we need to go back to the words. We need to go back to the script. And where you've got, let's say 26 different locations, headings, your show can only support 12. Let's have that collaboration. Let's understand as designers that we're storytellers, that we have a voice in that. And there was a beautiful reference in one of the earlier panels about, the script is the bones of a story, an idea. It's a baseline to work from. And if you understand that and say, okay, we can go back to that, you can take the pressure off breaking people to achieve the impossible. And you actually just, you never compromise, you just change what you're trying to do so that you don't have to compromise.
I'm asking you that question now. Maybe you want to add something anyway, but how to grow the nerve to say no? Like how to get there, how to...
You say yes far too many times and it hurts. That's what it is.
I think that part of that is you have to have the confidence and the trust of your producer and your director, and that's something that you have to gain, through the, it's hard if it's a new project and you haven't worked with people, but certainly when you're working with a director or producer that knows you well, I think they do listen when you say, because and also because it's we don't cry wolf. When we can do something, we'll do it, and we'll do it beautifully, but if that's why I try to keep a calm demeanor, so when I look agitated, everyone gets really worried. Because it means I'm actually worried. Because it's, and that, I think that does have weight with people, because it is about, like, we're trying to support, as Jamie was saying, we're trying to support the story and the script and tell it in the best way, and to satisfy our own creative input in the way that we feel is interesting and interesting to ourselves. But we also, it's a matter, I think there is something you're saying about coming from the theater where there's a certain scrappiness about it. Like, I can locate the things that I think really matter, and there are other things that don't, and trying to communicate to that. And the other thing I was going to say is it's really important to communicate to your crew clearly. Like, I love when the production office is connected to the mill, so I walk through every morning and talk to everybody, talk to the proper, because then you'll discover sometimes there's something that I actually don't care. That's not important that they're stressed out about. You know, they're doing something in a way because they think I want something, and then it's just a conversation, and suddenly you can see the relief, you know, from their faces that there may be, you kind of have to break down sometimes the presuppositions about things that aren't true, aren't leading to the result, and sometimes get people doing more work than they need to do, and getting stressed out about something that's not necessary.
Yeah, I had an example. I did a show for about the Stephen Lawrence inquiry in the UK, which was a major race relations issue in London, and we were filming at the height of the second wave of the pandemic, and we got to a point where it was like we were scouting houses, but they were strangers' houses. The epidemic, you know, the pandemic was in full swing, and we were just like, we can't keep scouting. We need to build this interior house. And they're like, well, it's not a build show. This is a location show. And I was like, well, we're going to have to do it. And then it became this conversation about how quickly we can do it. And it was a Victorian or Edwardian tenement house. And so I just phoned my construction manager in Scotland. I was working in London. I phoned one of my old team and just said, if I sketch you a floor plan, can you just cost this and get it built? And he said, yeah, what period is it? And we went and took some photos of the location. So he just picked a bunch of mouldings, door frames, found some doors. He went, these are slightly undersized, you're okay? I was like, I don't care. And this set arrived a week later, and we stood it up, and it was beautiful. But it was that thing of just like understanding that I don't need to grind a draftsperson to do that when my construction team have built that set 1,000 times on 1,000 shows, and just understand that actually trust them, let them do their thing. And like you say, I could have got lost in the reeds choosing a moulding, and I've seen it where someone's drawn, you know, the sectional view of a piece of coving or a skirting board or something like that, and then the construction manager was like, well, that's a composite moulding, it's going to take us 3 days to put that together. And you're like, it doesn't matter, it's a dingy bed sit, you know, for some heroin addicts. Like, the audience is not going to care, and it's wildly irresponsible of me to ask you to do that.
So communication too.
Yeah, what's important?
Always. Beth, when you started your career, what were your biggest struggles at the beginning?
Biggest struggles, definitely balancing life and work. I went through just, you know, job after job, just again, 1 million hours a week, 7 days a week. If you get a Sunday off, you were lucky. Some of those earlier days, I'm sure we've all been there. Many of us, Imbal and I've been there. You know, so we don't even have time to get home. We're just gonna have to sleep on the set on the couch and like get up in the morning and try to look fresh. And so that was the biggest struggle, is as the budgets got a tiny bit bigger than the $200,000 and $400,000 movies that we were starting on, being able to set, I think even on like Half Nelson, we sat there and thought like, okay, could we actually ask for a prop master? Like, could we actually say we need this? You know, it's things like that where you just started identifying what it was that you needed to make the jobs more manageable. So again, a big growing period with that, but trying to figure out what it was okay to ask for, what productions really could afford to offer. Of course, you know, UPMs and line producers, you know, most often it'll initially be a no, but there's normally a way to get to yes. And I was also big on compromising early on, and I was okay with that. You know, with my rates, I would chop down my rates so that we could afford another position to try to get, you know, get a third person in just to try to help gaff something. And so it was really 10 years. I spent 10 years of my career very much in that field and in that arena. But again, back to the life-work balance, just realizing I was 30 and I was going to burn myself right out, and all my friends were burning out, and I had friends leaving the industry because, you know, I think a lot of us here worked in the New York indie world, and in the 90s it was even harder, I know. But you know, early 2000s, you know, it was a way of life, and it was expected that you didn't eat, sleep, or drink, and just very, very challenging. And so anyway, setting up my own boundaries became a really big goal of mine about 10 years ago, and anybody who works with me knows that I start my day, I walk for an hour every single morning without fail, even in the rain. I go out, I have my tea and I have my dog, and I just take a walk, and it's kind of my decompression time. And when I started making little changes like that in my life, I just realized how much better I was sleeping, how much lower my stress was. I pride myself on being very kind and patient with the department. That's my biggest priority, first and foremost. Even before the work, I think we have to have humane conditions and happy environments where everybody's coming to work. This is, let's be honest, we all spend far more time with our coworkers than our families. It's something that's asked of us, at least during the waking hours. And so anyway, just realized how much happier I was getting when I was setting up those boundaries for myself and setting up that framework. And then just starting to translate that to the people I'm working with and just saying, I had a set designer come in on the last movie and she was limping and I went up and asked, oh, what's wrong? Did you hurt yourself? She said, oh, I had ankle surgery 8 weeks ago, but I can't go to physical therapy now because I'm working and it's going to take me away for an hour and a half in the afternoons. And there was a physical therapy center right across the street and she just said, I'm not allowed to go. And I just thought, this is crazy. This is your mobility. This is how your ankle is going to work for the rest of your life for your body. You can take a long lunch and go. And her face just transformed and she couldn't believe it. And I just kind of started to realize that how much that indoctrination has been really passed through, our departments and what we do and those expectations. And anyway, it's all been a very interesting learning experience, kind of trying to figure out different ways of doing what we do so that we don't go back to those challenges that we all, struggled with in the early parts of our career. I'll also just piggyback onto this. I'm also not quite answering the question, but also just piggyback onto that to say, I think COVID has also really shown us, I think everybody really got a big recalibration of what was important in their life with COVID. And so I think coming out of that, I think now more than ever is the time to start trying to set up those boundaries, trying to set up frameworks so that we can have long, happy, healthy lives and not run ourselves into the ground so early. So.
Yeah, having a conscious, is it bewusst? Like being aware of the process of doing self-reflection on what's going on, concerning well-being. So before COVID, how did you, or one of you guys, did bewusst? Yeah, like being conscious about how do I actually change my way of working in order to gain more life balance, more work-life balance, or better quality.
So the pre to post-COVID?
But before COVID or whenever, when you realized you had struggles, I guess you guys had them too, did you do a process, or even an inner real reflection process saying, okay, I'm going to change that now, I need a solution for this? Or did it just happen project after project that you improved by learning? Or was it an aware process?
Yeah, I don't think there was ever a moment where I had a conscious self-reflection, but there were definitely incidents that happen that bring you around to that, I think, or my own process of realizing that. One thing that Beth was saying that's interesting, when you tell someone they can go to the doctor and they look relieved, you start to realize, I don't want anyone working under a level of, environment of fear, right? That's not a good emotion in a workspace, right? People should be able to come to you and tell you that they need to go to the doctor or they need to go pick up their child and something, and they shouldn't be afraid. So that, I think, became clear to me over time, that you needed to open up the communication, hear people so that they understand that, that there isn't, that they have to, we can't be afraid of asking for things and speaking to each other.
Mine's somewhat fundamental as a person as well, is through sort of the process of self-discovery and self-acceptance that I've been through personally as a trans person, I became hyper-aware how tense I was and how much tension I carried as a person in the workplace and how much that did affect my team. And sort of, since... What was that?
I know, it sounded like a kitty.
It was a cat. That was an almighty heckle. That was amazing. Someone is feral in the audience. Sorry. But just like a sense of self-reflection and just sort of thinking, on one sense, I understood that I was pushing my team. I understood that I was ambitious, but I didn't quite see because of my own issues. And then how much that level of tension was tangible to people around me. And they were just like, it was amazing working with you, but God, it was stressful. Like, just, kind of my own internal struggles. And coming out the other side of that and going through, some genuine mental health crises and saying, actually, and having that reflected back at me and just like, Jesus, fuck, Jamie, you're the happiest person I've met in years. And knowing that I can still push my team, but I can carry them with me this time. In hindsight, my ambition was quite top down and I was pushing quite hard. And now I feel that I haven't changed my expectations of anyone, but I'm more open to be there with them as a person. And that's, it's no small thing. It's a genuine enlightenment for me to come through that self-acceptance and reflect on who I was and how that affected my interactions with those around me. And it was across my, oversharing to a big audience here, but we're all friends. But my entire life, everybody had that sense of who I was. And was like, well, yeah, you just full on, just properly full on the whole time, and in all aspects. And learning to see that in hindsight and just go, oh my days, like I can achieve more. And I mean, the last project I did was Anansi Boys with Neil Gaiman for Amazon. And that was going back to Scotland, and I'd not been back for sort of 5 years, sort of post-transition, and kind of rocking back up. And I put the band back together. I got my old crew, who I cut my teeth with 10, 15 years ago. And we absolutely smashed it. And the producers were astonished at the level of work we could turn around. And I was like, oh God, like if I'm happy, look what we can do together. And the atmosphere within the department, sorry, this is a long answer, but that sense of, we're talking about, the work from home Fridays, and one thing we did was the way that we meshed as there's an art department, set deck, props, the rigging gaffers, the riggers, the SFX team, the SFX prop makers. We all clubbed together as a unit and would go, every 2 weeks. One of our team, their husband ran a pub, so we'd have a karaoke night every 2 weeks. And this level of camaraderie. So by the end of the project, the floor crew were brutalized by the shoot. We went like pigs in shit. It was the best job ever. And again, it was just that thing of just like understanding how much I could inspire people to achieve, or how much I could, sometimes you did feel like you were trying to drag the project kicking and screaming because the expectations were enormous. But no one batted an eyelid. Everyone was happy. Everyone was content. And, temper's frayed, and the temper's always frayed when the outside pressures into that unit came in, where they were like, oh, we need to do this on Monday. And you could feel people start to freak out and go, we'll never turn it around. But we knew as a department we could go back to them and say, no, that won't be ready on that. This set will be ready. And it was like, oh, but we'll have to get a new booking engagement for that essay. And it's like, well, drop the couple of grand on the essay and save yourselves another 30 grand of construction labour. And just knowing what we're worth and knowing what we can achieve and saying, the schedule, again, like the script, when we start off, we think they're like, we're beholden to them and they're just like, it's a complete Bible and we have to deliver the schedule. But actually going back, as Neil had said, and saying, no, we need a couple more weeks on that. Like, it won't be ready. Like, if you want it to be, and then you understand and you start to see that they're just making decisions, and Sparks can give them a limitation as to what's achievable. Camera can give them a limitation. Actor availability can give them a limitation. And it's like, so we're the only, us and costume are the only departments who have to deliver the schedule. It's like, no, change the schedule. They're just days, and again, that's an understanding from a design department of saying, I'm not telling you how to spend the overall production budget, but please understand, just because we can do it, it's going to cost far more than it should. And that's irresponsible of me as a designer to do that. When I know that, yeah, okay, you might want to spend a bit more on casting, or you might need to, put some more, coaches on because we can't move the unit base, so we need to do a unit move. And even, God forbid, you'll need to take 30 minutes off the day so we hit our hours. It's like, do you want to take the 30 minutes off the day, or do you want, the DP to have to spend 3 hours lighting it because the location is absolute ass? It's,
Strategies on how to keep the pressure off yourself and your crew, especially when it comes to budgets and the producers wanting you to deliver within a budget that's obviously not possible. Maybe we could talk about the one or the other like strategy that you have, how you communicate this, and especially to also then director and DOP.
Yeah, I've got the smallest point, and it's one of the things I learned, that it's not my budget, it's their budget. Like the idea that art department are given a budget and we have to manage it. It's like, no, we will report to you what the things you're asking for on a timeline you're doing will cost. And it's up to you as a production team. You're the producer, you're the one who signs the check. You have to approve this. And if you approve it and it's an overage, it's an overage. And I'm not gonna wear the stress. And I've been there in that situation where you go over, you know you're gonna go over budget and they won't listen. And you take it, oh, we'll make it, there you go, we'll make it work. And you don't make it work. And you go over budget and you get hauled over the rocks. But as the years have gone on and the budgets have got bigger, and the expectations have got bigger, the stress level, in theory, should be going up through the roof, but my learnt process from my collaborators has been to say, no, this is a conversation. It's like, and we have to let our darlings die if they're too expensive. You know, there's always another solution to get the story told. And I can't put myself in that position, and I can't put my team in that position where that overage reflects on us badly, because it's not our fault. You know, on some level, they're not even our choices. It's like, well, you know, again, schedule will say you need to be A, B, C, D. But learning to push that conversation back to the production team and say, we will manage the things that we say we can deliver on the budget we've got. Like, once we've costed it and we've made the estimations, we will manage that and deliver that. But the actual price of it is what it is. You know, there's unless we change the idea and we change the design, but that has to be a conversation with the production team.
And I think also to, you know, not being afraid of coming in with 3 or 4 other examples. I know they said in the last panel as well, you know, always have a few more ideas in your back pocket and know the time and the money that each of those would end up costing, and not being afraid to go into directors and producers and say, here are other ways to do it. And I know, at least when I was brought up, it was always kind of frowned upon. You know, it's like, well, they've asked for this, it has to be this. And I definitely started my career feeling like that's what we had to do. But as I've gotten stronger and more confident and more experienced, I've just found over and over again, directors, producers are all very open to creative ideas that are going to save them money, and it means, oh, maybe then they can afford that actor they want, or they could do this if you kind of keep showing ways that they can do things, you know, more cheaply, more efficiently with labor. They're just wildly open to it. So I think just digging back, and I'm really grateful for Indie Roots for that, because that's kind of how we did everything. Was, you know, what can you do with, you know, duct tape and safety pins, and so I think that's the best way, rather than just saying a flat out, here's my boundary, this is a no, and then, you know, it sets off a cascade of tears. And I think it's just, let's just take a more reasonable route, we can go this way, and everybody's happier. And again, kind of back to what Jamie was saying, when I noticed back to my walks, when I started taking my walks in the morning, and I started carving out time to have dinner with my husband at night, and I started, you know, trying to time it so I wasn't hitting traffic at certain hours, and all those little things that just chipped away at all the stress we all carry. Because let's be honest, we all love what we do, but this is a really stressful industry. This is a really stressful line of work that we're in. But with each of those little changes that you do, just finding yourself being happier, being calmer. I work much better when I'm happy and I'm calm. Ideas come much more easily. I'm a much better leader. I'm a much better manager. And then just recognizing that will trickle down to every single person in the department, literally all the way down to the PAs. You know, they're feeling like they're looked after, they're cared for. They're not being ground into the walls with these crazy hours. Just everybody does better work and is happier at the end.
Yeah, I just say I think with budgets, the budget and schedule is all, you know, especially in the beginning of a project, is a work in progress, and you have to think about it that way. So what I try to do is I don't tell people what they want to hear. I tell them the reality, taking the cue from my collaboration with the DOP and the director and the writer sometimes, what we're being asked to do, what we want to do, and it'll cost this much, it'll take this much time, and that's more than you've budgeted, but that's what it is, so that it's very clear. I don't want to ever, you know, because that's when you don't want to lean into your crew to deliver faster something that you know takes that much time and costs that much money. So it's just the clarity of that is important to me, I think. And usually, there's always some sort of compromise you'll have to make, but I feel like if you present it that way, you get more of what you're going for.
Do you ever talk figures to the director or the DOP? Like specific figures?
I will talk figures to a DP, but not the director.
Oh, yeah,
but I did a project, and the line producer asked the DP to do a budget, and it was amazing. And one of the things that came out of that was and I work with the location managers now, is we put the art and the location budgets together, and we go set by set, and we actually talk to the producers about what it will cost to deliver that location in art and location fees terms and unit moves and where the unit base is. So we start to actually investigate, are we spending the right money in the right places? Because, if a location is really cheap and really easy to service, but will cost the art department 40,000 to do a transformation, yet there's another location a couple of miles away which would only cost 20,000 in location fees, and art department spend 4,000. Like, that's the conversation that needs to be had. And we had exactly the same thing with the DP on this one project. So we would sit down as a group on a Friday and review what we were trying to do and look at what we were as a crew spending on delivering it. And that's that moment where the DP was like, I need a pre-light on this. I need a swing gang coming in the night before. We need to put tents up on this sort of stuff. And you're just like, hold on, the lighting budget on this location is through the roof. And there's no good reason for it. It's just a whim because I've said it might work as a space, and the location team are happy with it because it fits their parameters within a certain shooting radius. And you go, okay, well, let's rethink this, because that's not a good use of time and resources, and targeting the work and collaborating essentially, and just treating it that way. And obviously, if you can then as a group go to the director and say, look, we think this is the best solution for you to take their scene, they're going to be receptive. They're going to listen, to more than one HOD. If you can come together as a group and say, well, actually, we can get you more on camera. You can get more production value on camera if we do it this way. And that's the important thing. It's like, let's get some depth into this space. Let's make the lighting scheme straightforward in the sense that it can be beautiful without breaking anyone. And it's always looking for those little moments, those little hacks. So, when location scouting, again, it's like, oh, can you make this space work? And you're like, not a chance. And you know full well that you're going to have to tent it, or it's too small, and there's nowhere for the DP even to put any, Kino banks or LED panels on the ceiling because the ceilings are too low. And you're just like, we shouldn't be here. It's just going to compromise the shooting day as well, because the floor crew are going to feel all of that tension in the compromises that have been made, because actually if we want to swing around and look the other way, we need to take the tent down outside. And you're just like, okay, you're going to tell the first AD he needs to lose an hour for the riggers to come in. It's like, no one's going to thank you for that.
And I think, I don't necessarily talk about numbers with directors, but one thing I've more and more in recent years, I do, with both the director and the DP, I do refer to page count. I think, of course, there's always that little 2/8 page, beat that is going to be really important for telling a story or to show a character's setting, and you'd have to get that right and put that money in. But more often than not, it's just pointing out, especially if the director has big ambitions and big appetites, as they should, it's pointing out, like, listen, we don't have infinite resources or people, time and money, but this thing that we're talking about that we want to make a huge meal out of, let's look at the pages, it's half a page, and that's really going to take away from what we're going to be able to do over here, where we're going to be in this set for 15 pages, and that's a whole character development, and that's really where we should put the focus. So I try to do it more with that, by just pointing out really how much time is this really going to be on screen, how much time, what kind of impact is it really going to have on the movie, and if we're going to pour a whole lot into this one street exterior because, we fell in love with this alley, and we're going to spend a whole lot of money because we have to do this, this, and this, and it's only going to be in for a flash, that's definitely going to drain resources from other areas. So I will say it that way. And again, more and more, especially younger directors, just so happy, so eager to be making a movie and coming from much tinier budgets. They're just so happy to have the honesty and to have a creative partner in it, even if the creative partner is saying maybe X isn't possible, but let's think about Y and Z.
So back to work-life balance. Neil, is there still something you would learn to do better? Or are you like perfectly happy the way you...
Oh, no.
your work balance
No,
is?
there's plenty to do better. I think, you know, I think it's just when you're talking about well-being, it's the well-being of an entire art department. So I think that's what I'm always working on, and that really is a human communication thing. And I think that that's a skill you do learn over time, but it's really making sure that you are listening and attentive to your crew and really understanding what's going on. One thing that recently I've had, you know, always surprised by when there has been like even a personnel issue or almost an HR issue, like maybe someone's not jiving with the rest of the crew or something's going on. I'm always surprised how late that comes to me, that people are afraid to come to me with something. So that's something I feel I'm always working on, is communicating and creating a relationship with people where they feel comfortable coming and talking to me, because there is, you know, there's a necessary hierarchical nature of what we do to get things done, but there's also a way to make it open, I think, and keep people mentally healthy and you know, I think what we're kind of, I think what's come up a bit is there's joy in what we do, and it's our job to try and emphasize, you know, maximize that and minimize the fear, right? So everybody should be enjoying themselves, enjoying what they're doing.
Same question. The number 1 meant 15, right? Now it's number 2. So now would be the moment to come to the Q&As, unless you also want to add something to that.
I kept telling everybody when I did my little manifesto at the beginning of this movie, we all called it my Jerry Maguire moment, and we weren't sure if it was going to work or fail. But one of the other things I did say is that I want to try to do once every other week a lunchtime yoga class with everybody, and I'm still a big believer in that. We haven't done it yet, but I will report back and let you know how that goes.
Looking forward to hear. Anything from your side?
In terms of
what you would still, where you see a chance for improvement on bringing more well-being at work.
Well, I suppose it's that thing of being open to listening and understanding how intimidated the team might be about doing that, and trying to develop the language to communicate to them effectively, to say, no, you can, you know, because again, you know, been in situations where you're checking in on, are you fine? Is everything okay? How are you getting on with that? And then you hear on the grapevine that they're having a nightmare and they're really stressed. And you're just like, so am I being given platitudes, or am I not actually really listening when I'm asking them the question? And it's like, okay, how do I give them that attention? How do I facilitate them that openness for them to actually fess up and just say, look, Jamie, this is too much, or we are there. And you kind of just like, you know, because again, going back to that thing, everyone always wants to please and doesn't want to be seen to be disruptive or upset about it. But it's like, if you can engage with it constructively, even what seems like an issue, you know, even if it can't be solved, even if there is an interpersonal issue that cannot be solved, there's no reason why you shouldn't part ways under, you know, reasonable circumstances. There's no reason for any of that acrimony that you historically see, and you see fallings out in departments. It's like, if it doesn't work, if your working practice, and again, as a designer, you kind of want everybody to be happy, you want everyone to give their best. But on some level, there's an understanding that there are people who aren't for you, and you aren't for certain people. And, you know, I don't know, I might be like utter marmites for people, as far as, you know, in the sense of take it or leave it. But it's trying to keep an open ear to that and actually just go, is it worth the emotional time for both of us to keep pushing at this for the wage, or do we actually just need to have the conversation and say, look, this isn't working. You know, there's no bad blood, and, you know, kind of. But that's an HR issue, which again, none of us have got any damn training in. You know, I mean, on the last projects, and we've done it on this one as well, is we brought in HR consultants just so that people have got somewhere to go, so that anyone production-wide can, you know, because obviously the line producer tends to be that name on the call sheet, that crew can go to when they've got an issue, but the line producers are strung out more than anyone ever. And so, you know, expecting them to facilitate any HR issues. And it's, you know, long-term projects particularly where you're all in the same room for 12 months. And, you know, you're hitting the ground running at 1,000 miles an hour. You know, the scripts have been done, concept art has been delivered, and you know, construction is starting in 2 weeks' time. You need to be operating smoothly so quickly, and sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you book the wrong person, you hire the wrong person. You know, your instinct, you might, I mean, like I say, you know, you've got, I think my department was about 46 on the last gig, and there were 2 people who, after about a month, it became clear we had to speak to them, and we had to say, look, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about, do you want to stay, do you want to leave? Because we don't feel we're on the right wavelength. And it was difficult, and it's hard to sit in a room and say to someone, you know, it's not me, it's you. It's like a weird breakup thing going on. Or it's not you, it's me. You know, that's the one. But actually accepting, it's like, well, I can try and, you know, as a manager, I can try and learn to do better. But also on another level, I don't think I can. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm at my limits in certain places. Understanding your limits, I suppose, that's a thing to learn.
Thank you. So yeah, sorry, now it's time for some questions. Back there, I see one.
First of all, yeah, awesome with HR. I had it on my last job, and it was such a game changer, not having to be the boss and the friend, and it's a separate issue. I'm not involved. I'm focusing on everything else, and it was so helpful. But I have a question. We're talking about well-being at work. Do you have any tips or tricks for adjusting to your own healthy self-care routine after a job? I know I live in one country, I work in 2 others, we have away jobs, we're here, we're there. How do we show up for ourselves the way we would show up for our team when the job is over?
Vacation.
I take a week and
Long vacation.
Just start the next job 2 weeks before that one finishes, and you never have that issue. It's fine. No, I think this all ties into like getting a working practice and getting a relationship with your team where you don't have to be social animals, but the idea that you can have some rapport with the people you're working with beyond deliverables, beyond what's going on, and going back to, again, other people's conversations, understanding what's their thing, you know, and just having the sense of it. So you come off the back of a job, and so my current art director is just like the most heavy metal person I've ever met. And he's constantly booking tickets to gigs, and he's like, I'm going to go and see Iron Maiden in you know, Brazil and all this. I was like, amazing. And then it inspired me to, I'm going to book some tickets to go to gigs. And then, so, you know, the current project finishes at Christmas, and I've got like 3 concerts in late December and 2 in January. And that's because I've been talking to my team. I've understood that, that's what social lives are like. Like, that's what everyone else does, isn't it? You know, they plan stuff. And I think, I mean, to be honest, the fact that everyone's come here is a pure example of that. It's like that terror of just saying, oh no, I'm going to plan to be away from work during that period. Like, that's essentially unheard of. You know, I think the amount of front in this room that has happened, where everyone's gone and spoken to their producer and their director and just said, by the way, I am not available for, you know.
And you all probably saw. Yeah.
So, well done.
And you all probably saw that the world did not stop. The world didn't stop spinning. The production didn't come to a grinding halt. Everybody is fine. You know, they can survive for a couple of days. Like, I think that was a good learning lesson for all of us who stepped away from shows.
Yeah, we are somewhat inessential as well. That's, you know, we seem like we're the key, but no.
It's because we run our department so well.
Hi again. Oh, shit, that was loud. Sorry about that. So I have a general question again, also taking the last panels in consideration. So Neil said, as we all think, like 3D models, we can that person doesn't have to be in the office. Or then we heard from the last panel, okay, graphics doesn't necessarily have to be in the office. So could you think that even further to say, well, to go like in a coding area where they have like sprints, they have weekly sprints, would you say that we could adapt that to art department as well? You have like a set designer who said, okay, you need to do this week. Can you do it? And he will never show up in the office, and you will just have a one-on-one once a week or something like that. So you really do this more agile way of thinking. Like you say, okay, I can't be in the office Friday because I need to pick up my kids. But again, thinking the whole art department more agile. Sorry about that. Saying, okay, you can do that and that and that in this week. And I don't care when you work, if you work at night or a day or whatever you want to do, you just need to deliver the result, as you said. It's about thinking, not time. Just to bring it up, there's no right answer, obviously.
That's an interesting question. That was actually one of the things that did come up when I was talking with my department at the beginning of the show I'm on. Just like, oh gosh, is that the direction we're heading? I definitely think not, and I definitely think that wouldn't be a healthy way for us to do what we do, because I think much like some of the earlier panels were saying, so much creativity is born from all of us being together and all of us hearing the conversations together, all of us looking at the same things, the same images together, those impromptu corridor conversations. So I think being in person, and for the art department, I don't know about you guys, but COVID really slayed me not having, doing a job and not having pretty even consistent FaceTime with folks and seeing folks. So I would advocate to not let it get to that extent. I also think it's just, the human condition. It's great for community and for us to be together when we can and collaborate when we can and in person. I'm a hugger. COVID was hard for me.
This could probably be a panel in itself, but I am a new mother and in the industry, and I absolutely love what I do. And so sort of my general question is, what can we do to do what we love and have families? I've had conversations with many people about trailers with childcare on set or structuring hours differently. But I would love to continue this conversation and hear suggestions, what's been talked about, because it's more than just in the art department. It would be a change with the producers and what they accept and how we structure things. So
I think job shares are wildly underutilized. One of the things I've done recently is having my set decorator, for example, having her assistant set deck be nearly as experienced as she was, so that they could do like 3 days and 2 days or 3 days and 3 days. And there was lots of discussions. And actually, from my point of view, given the nature of the work, and this is very project specific, it wasn't like an interruption of service of having someone to collaborate with. I just felt spoiled because I had 2 people to collaborate with. And, and again, it's difficult because you've got the whole kind of, ubiquitous conversations that you're constantly having and calling someone and on their day off or something like this. But like building the mechanisms and just saying, okay, we won't make any voice calls and any communications won't be, I won't come at you with something time limited. But if it's something about what's happening next week, I'll ask you the question if you're not in. And so just thinking about that and looking at the department and saying, what roles can be supported in that style? Do you know what I mean? Like how can it be facilitated? What it actually requires? I mean, even like props teams, to be honest, it's like you're on set crews, particularly in the UK, where you're standby art director and you're standby props. It's like the jobs I've been involved in, we've had a constant buffet of standby props crew and standby art directors, depending on what's going on. So if we had like big sets coming up, I'd take the standby off the floor, put someone else on, so they could be prepping with us, trying to work out what the specifics are in a big SFX set or something like that. And actually just understanding that, yes, there's lots of points in the pipeline where it has to be one person who's answerable to it. But actually there's plenty of other roles in the department where you can give people flexibility. But again, that does speak to wages and speak to, are people willing to do that and say, well, this is a 3-day-a-week job. But, the number of friends I've had who have had to take years out of the industry because of childcare issues. And you're just like, well, hold on, And now, it's sort of, again, post-COVID, and post making the hours a flexible thing, so my current set deck, she does all of her childcare in and amongst us working, and sometimes the kids come into the office in the morning, then her husband will come and pick them up, and she's, her husband's a musician, so she's in a very kind of flexible kind of home environment. But actually just knowing that, yeah, just go. Just leave at 3, do the school run, pick the kids up. I'll catch you after they've had their tea and we can talk about the day. And because again, it's not essential they're in the office. You know, they've got a buyer to do the resourcing. What I need is a creative collaborator in that role. So.
And I'll just piggyback onto that too, and I think just being more open to working remotely, especially mothers out there. We have 3 in my department right now. One's on maternity leave, just had a baby. Two others have 2 young children, and we've just said, listen, we'll just be entirely open if you want to do 3 days a week remote or do half days, work from home half day, or work here with us while the kids are in school and then go home for the other half of the day. Just trying to be much more open and receptive to that. I think like they said in the earlier panels, it's amazing to see 75% women here. That's incredibly exciting. But I think we've all, everybody's encountered that, and women especially have a really tough time when it does come to having children and maternity leave, and you can see so many careers do get completely stagnated or sideswiped or put on hold, and I think being more open and more accepting of different working practices so that doesn't happen to women is incredibly important.
I think it's finished, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone.